pretty bad. Blizzards of bullshit, deluges of dribble, heavy falls of codswallop, floods of ignorance. And in the murky visibility, one can scarcely discern the dark, shadowy form of a massive, fateful failure by government to rise to the greatest challenge of our time. If we are to have a future at all, it does not lie with them inside that house, but with this band of woolly-hatted placard wavers right out here.
Well, it's great to see you here, and I only wish it wasn't a Saturday, because I want the MPs to be in there, because I want them to see that the commitment and the passion and the energy and the pressure that you represent here today. Because the truth is that there's far more political leadership on the streets of London here today than there is in all the grandeur of the Palace of Westminster. We have 650 MPs in there, but only 12 of them could find time to go to the one debate on climate in Cancun that we had last week. We have a political system that seems completely incapable of acting with the urgency that we need. And so that's why it's so important that you're here on the streets today, and we're going to stay on the streets and demand action until we get it. On current projections, there's no way that we can keep temperatures below the 2-degree threshold. And even that threshold is no longer considered enough to prevent extremely dangerous climate change. Instead, if we continue with business as usual, the world is headed towards an average temperature rise of 4 degrees. Now that is a hellish vision. That is a vision of droughts and desertification, of hunger and disease, and of mass extinctions of species. A zero carbon Britain is perfectly possible, and all that's missing is the political will, and that's why it's so important that we're here today.
It's big demonstrations like this, it's public pressure, it's the climate camps, it's powerful media messages that drive the politicians, drive impact on Parliament. That's what really counts. And we've had plenty of successes already. Stopping the Kingsnorth coal-fired power station. Very important. Maintaining the Vestas occupation for a very long time. Stopping the 3rd runway at Heathrow, which is incredibly important. And getting the politicians to bring in the 5-year climate change budgets, which ought to get Britain on a path down to an 80% reduction by 2050. We probably have in this country, in these islands, more wind power capacity than the whole of Europe put together. But how much are we using? A miserable 5% of our electricity is generated from renewable sources of energy. And if Germany and France can generate 15% of their electricity from renewables, and Scandinavia 40%, then we can certainly generate at least 20% by 2020. What about a Tobin tax on financial speculation? That would stop a lot of speculation that nearly destroyed the economy. It would readily bring in something of the order of 20–30 billion pounds a year.
Now what we need to do is to set a global lead by decarbonising faster and put a better offer on the table. If our delegates going to Cancun said, well, Britain is going to move completely out of fossil fuel emissions in 2 decades, then that would push forward the global negotiations. So we set out to do a report to see how that's possible. What we're trying to do is literally remove the political blinkers of short-term visioning, electoral timescales, and look 20 years ahead to see what's the sort of Britain we're going to need in 2030. Then we look at what existing technologies, not fanciful futuristic kites that fly up in the stratosphere that send electricity down wires, technologies we have today, that are available today, that we can very widely deploy Firstly, to power down the amount of energy we're using, to get rid of that 1950s mindset to energy, to become smart and lean, but then to power up Britain's indigenous renewable supplies. Now, in doing this, we can create literally millions of jobs. We can kickstart the economy. We can get money flowing into Britain. Instead of money flowing out of Britain whenever we use energy, get a copy of the report. We've made the report free to download. Everybody can have a copy of this report. It's on the internet waiting for you from the CAT website, cat.org.uk. Download your free copy, but then send your copy to your MP, to your MEP, to your local councillors and say, have you seen this? What do you think of this? The science says we must. The technology says we can. It's time to say, we will. 1, 2, 3, we will.
Now this government says it wants to be the greenest government ever. We at Friends of the Earth say, that's nice. Now prove it to us at Cancun, and prove it to us here in the UK. Here are 3 things I want you to remember that we want to keep saying to the government until they get it. The first one is get serious about the targets. Now the emissions targets on the table in Cancun are totally inadequate to avoid dangerous climate change. And even the UK government's targets, which are relatively advanced. Do you know what? If all rich countries adopted those same targets, we would still have a 50-50 chance of catastrophe. Which one of you would get on a bus or a train if the driver told you there was a 50-50 chance it's going to crash? That is madness. The second one is this. We need them to lead by example. Now the UK led the old industrial revolution, which we now know, it wasn't our fault, we didn't understand, but it began what we now know as climate change. The UK needs to lead the new green industrial revolution if this government seriously wants to be called the greenest government ever. And here's the third thing we need the government to remember. They need to get fair about the finance. Now the money on the table in Cancun is again completely inadequate to achieve poorer countries adapting to climate change and poorer countries going green. We need to up that money and we need to get it flowing fast, otherwise we will precipitate even more disasters. So those are the 3 things for the government. Okay? Get serious about the targets, lead from the front, demonstrate it at home, and then get serious about the money.
The Earth is an interdependent system in which the human beings are only one of the components. It is not possible to recognize only the right of human part without provoking an imbalance of the whole system. To guarantee these human rights and to restore the harmony with the nature, it is necessary to recognize and to apply the rights of the Mother Earth.
You and I didn't select to live in an age of slash and burn cuts and crash and never learn economics. We didn't opt to be part of the last generation who can pull the brakes on climate chaos. But we can choose how to use the time that we do have. My call out today is for everyone to have the strength to take an extra step. For those who've shouted at the telly, to sign petitions, to write letters. For seasoned letter writers to get out on the streets, and for the protesters on the streets to take inspiration from the brave, audacious people on trial in Nottingham, and take a lead from the young people out here in all weathers to defend their education, and to show solidarity with the workers at Vestas last year who occupied their factory, and to take the action that we know is needed directly. We will be remembered in history, either as the generation that let the last chance slip through our fingers, or as the generation that stood up, that pulled the brakes, and that turned this mess around.
How now shall we stop it? Says owner to ruler, with spies and with soldiers, says Tory to Whig. We'll hang every breaker and Luddite. Oh, take our shots for troublemakers, and that's what they do.
Chris Hume. Remember him? The Liberal Democratic MP for Eastleigh? And this is what he said in 2007. He castigated Bush and Brown, warned politicians had failed to see the future. He spoke about the urgent need for green action. Fast forward to 3 years, and where's Chris Hume today? Chris Hume's in Cancun. This is what he said before he went to Cancun. No one expects a binding agreement to be struck at Cancun. What happened in those 3 years, Chris? What happened in those 3 years? For those who say power doesn't corrupt, there's your answer.
I'm here just to say thanks. Just to say thanks. For the last few years on this demonstration, I've come along and I've asked for your support in our campaign against the third runway and to prevent the obliteration of a third of my constituency. And you've responded. You responded in your demonstrations, in your direct action, in the climate camp, in the lobbying of MPs, at a time when big business was against us, politicians was against us, and all the media. And you responded with determination and courage. And as a result of that, there will be no third runway at Heathrow. We won. We won.
So if you imagine you're in your local community and a supermarket is threatening to come in, and that's really bad news for any rational analysis on an economic and a carbon analysis. So there are kind of three things you can do. You can lobby your local politicians to say, don't let them in. That's one. You can stand in front of the machines as they start breaking the ground to put the supermarket in. And that's another very, very important one. And the third one is you can build a local food system that renders that supermarket superfluous to requirements. And that's very much the transition approach. So redesigning the key systems that we rely on to survive and thrive in our communities. If we wait for the governments, it'll be too little, too late. If we do it as individuals, it's just going to be too little. But if we do it as communities together, then it might just be just enough, just in time, and it'll certainly be a way that we can lead the government, who are followers, in my view, not leaders. It gives something for the government to follow that will take us towards the zero-carbon Britain we need.
It's not just this huge group of people I'm speaking to now, but that we are all part of a wider global movement. Now, I'm not sure there's any other issue that has generated such a vibrant movement. Sometimes we can feel down, sometimes we can feel depressed when we see things aren't going our way or as quick as we want. But I think actually we can feel very positive, because this is a vibrant international movement with vibrant, realistic and international answers. I think for that reason we can applaud ourselves loudly, longly.